We've just had this really amazing, intense burst of really clever ideas. So, oh, sorry, too close to the mic. So I think we should actually start with a moment of quiet reflection. So this video you're watching is called Elevated, and it was made in 2009 as a collaboration between two demo groups named RGBA and TBC. Without a background in the demo scene or in computer graphics, this footage may not mean anything to you. It just looks like a camera flying over some terrain. In fact, the first time I saw it, it was because my husband happened to have it running on his computer, and I briefly glanced over, and I was like, why is that so special? But what makes it special is that it's actually a 4-kilobyte demo. This whole thing is 4 kilobytes. The artistry becomes apparent once you realize that a program 1/3 the size of my Twitter avatar generated this entire video. The imagery alone doesn't teach us that. There's a certain level of pre-existing knowledge, dare I say technical knowledge, necessary to appreciate how incredibly cool an accomplishment that is. I think a similar kind of thing exists for game systems. There's a particular kind of delight we get from emergent experiences, the kind of delight that occurs when we know that something that we witnessed in a game happened for us, and only for us. But this requires us to appreciate the nature of the systems in a game. If we happen to be under the illusion that we're playing a linear authored experience, we'll respond very differently from when we're aware of the beautiful serendipity that arises all the time in simulation. Without some existing degree of systems literacy, the charms of emergence may elude us. It's popular to talk about how video games have the potential to make people more systems literate. We like to think that understanding systems in the games we play makes us better at understanding the systems we encounter in the real world. Sadly, things don't usually work out that way. Understanding the deep, multi-layered systems of a game like League of Legends does not seem to make players better equipped to understand the deep, multi-layered systems of, say, social privilege in all its many forms and with all its intersecting axes. In fact, more often we find the situation is completely reversed. Many games demand we already have some basic systems literacy in order to understand them. I was speaking with Jim Rossignol, the designer of Sir, You Are Being Hunted, which is an excellent systems-driven game. And he told me about a player who said he didn't like the battle scene in the game. Of course, Sir doesn't have a battle scene. It doesn't have any scenes at all in the way we understand them. The player had just seen a huge fight happen by accident and believed that it was all by design. I experienced this kind of feedback too on my recent game, Redshirt, which is a game all about simulating behavior on a social network. I read one account of a player describing their playthrough in which their girlfriend dumped them for their lecherous manager, and after they were promoted, the player entered another relationship, though their original girlfriend, newly and conspicuously single, started insisting that they get back together, and they relented, leaving them in an unhappy relationship and full of regret. Of course, none of this kind of thing is scripted at all, though it was interpreted as such, and the player expressed their dismay at a lack of a satisfying resolution to the supposed storyline. So it goes to show, games that don't have a pre-authored linear narrative have an expectation problem for which a better systems literacy is the answer. Without that, how are we to know what to expect? We may find ourselves critiquing the narrative arc of a Dwarf Fortress playthrough or Minecraft level design. Games with linear authored storylines have, for the most part, taught players what to expect. So there's a challenge here for developers to communicate what systems-driven game design really is. There's an interesting set of tensions here, though. We want players to better understand game systems so they can appreciate the possibilities inherent in them. But as those systems become more complex, this becomes yet another axis upon which video games can be exclusive and inaccessible. After all, video games and the culture surrounding them are already fraught with barriers ranging from social to economic and obstructed by the complexity of controllers and other conventions. Systems-driven games are already perceived as hardcore in some way, as much as I hate that dichotomy, and there are many ingrained assumptions to overcome. Perhaps when we communicate about games, particularly with people who don't tend to engage with them, we need to better highlight their systemic nature alongside all the other many things which make games interesting. It's a problem of education, though it's a difficult one. But there is hope. If you explain DayZ to someone unfamiliar with games, they'll tend to be more interested than if you explain Call of Duty to them. Games with emergent experiences provide us with these tiny moments of awe as we realize that a particular thing happened just for us and no one else will quite experience it in quite the same way. As developers, we need to make more kinds of weird and wonderful and diverse systems-driven games, telling all kinds of quirky, emergent stories for and about all kinds of people. And as both developers and players, we need to get better at talking about these special anecdotes, these tiny moments of awe, while at the same time realizing and describing the magical complexity that makes them happen. Thank you.